Hello and welcome to Data Driven, the podcast where we explore the emerging field of data science. We bring the best minds in data, software engineering, machine learning and artificial intelligence. Now here are your hosts, Frank Lavinia and Andy Leonard.
Hello and welcome back to Data Driven, the podcast where we focus on the emerging fields of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. If you like to think of data as the new oil, then you could think of this as, well, car talk, because we focus on where the rubber meets the virtual road. And with me, as ever, on this epic road trip down the information superhighway is everyone's favorite data philosopher, Andy Leonard. How you doing, Andy?
I'm doing well, Frank. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I feel like I got a good workout over the last day or two.
What are you doing to work out?
Well, I'm not actually working out. I am actually moving furniture around in my office. And I know that doesn't sound very healthy. I thought with the change of seasons, it'd be cool to kind of change up the way my desks are set up.
I was going to say, I've heard you have 1 million monitors.
Well, 1 million might be a stretch, but 1 million would be awesome, actually. I'd get a tan without ever going outside. So the context behind this is, as you know, Andy, but I switched to a standing desk, I guess sometime earlier this year. And I thought I kind of finally got kind of taken in by the hype around standing. And I started doing it. And then I noticed that, you know, one of the things that was kind of annoying is I'd find myself shuffling back and forth. And that was kind of annoying. So I realized, then I discovered such a thing as a treadmill desk.
And, you mentioned that.
Yeah, and I got a used one off Craigslist. And yes, Craigslist is still around. I got it, and for a long, complicated thing, I decided to put the treadmill desk underneath the standing desk. I'll have to post pictures to explain this. So that's what I did, and I loved it. I walk at least a mile a day.
Wow.
And it does take some getting used to be able to type and walk at the same time. But I noticed a couple of things, right? Because I'm a data geek now, and I have a Fitbit. So I'm able to track kind of my energy levels and how I feel based on raw data. So instead of it just being a subjective thing, I feel tired today, or I feel tired because it's Monday, or that sort of nonsense, I can actually say like, oh well, if I don't get a certain amount of exercise, I do feel fatigued the next day.
That's interesting.
Which is awesome for my health, because I've lost that and the change in diet. I'm down about 20 something pounds for the 2017.
Congratulations, Frank.
Thank you, man.
I have found a couple of those pounds you lost.
I'm hoping I don't find them. I'm sorry that you found them, but as long as I don't find them, I'm good.
Well, if I'd get off my butt and get to the gym, I would do that. I would do better, but I haven't done it. I haven't taken advantage of some of the time I've been at home. I'm traveling a lot right now, so it's sometimes challenging to do that. Some other times, though, Frank, when I'm on the road or at an event, I walk a lot more when I'm at an event than I do when I'm sitting in my office, obviously. Oh, absolutely. That's something that my first encounter with a pedometer was at TechEd 2005. And I think it was SQL Server had a contest where if you got a certain number, you win a prize or something like that. And then I took it home with me, and I noticed, I'd walk, 10, 12,000. The Ocean County Convention Center in Florida is massive, as are most convention centers. And I would notice that, I would walk, 10, sometimes 15,000 steps in a day, and I go home, I'm down to 800. I mean, wow, yeah.
And that was something I noticed, and then I never really did anything with it, since then. But as you get older, you get more conscious of your health, and I thought, the other thing that was kind of anecdotal to this is I noticed when I was studying for the data science exams that if I were to be on a bike or an elliptical while I was watching the training videos, the quizzes that they have, I would score very high, 80 to 90% guaranteed minimum.
Oh, wow.
And given that 70 is passed, then it just seemed like a lot of good sense to just do it while I'm on the elliptical, you know. And it's not intensity; it's just kind of even low intensity. And I've been reading a book lately called I'm totally going to blank out on the name of the book, which is ironic because it's about improving brain health and memory. But it's basically talks about how to, and I'll put it in the show notes what the actual name is. Basically talks about kind of if you want to improve your cognitive functions, first step is exercise.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And going into it, it kind of makes sense because the brain is a physical organ, and the more oxygen it gets, the better it performs.
That does make sense.
As someone who, up until this year, really despised and loathed exercise, plus there's also, even if you don't despise and loathe it, like you said, if you're traveling and whatnot, it's just really hard to do this.
Yeah, it is. It takes discipline, but it's like every other habit, right?
Right.
You need discipline to get started. Once you've done it, and I think the science says it's like 3 weeks or something. Once you've done it daily for 3 weeks, it becomes a habit, and then you can't really remember what it was like before you didn't do it.
Exactly. In fact, I actually, if I'm sitting all day, because I've been in situations where I've kind of had to sit all day, like I'll just get up and walk around. Just because even if I'm waiting, I'll just stand up. Just because that's what I'm used to now.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned books. Audible is one of our sponsors, and I listen to, the one thing about traveling a lot, and I have been traveling a lot recently, is I've been able to listen to some audiobooks. And I have forever not been able to really enjoy an audiobook that was like fiction. I've always enjoyed, I listen to books on theology and business, and those I get a lot out of, especially when I'm driving or flying somewhere. But my son, 14 years old, Stevie Ray, he turned me on to a book that's being made into a movie. It's read by Will Wheaton, and it's Ready Player One.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of this book or not, but Will Wheaton does a fantastic job reading it, first of all. I was really impressed with his narration.
So little Wesley has grown up.
Yeah, he has. And Frank, you'd enjoy it because you played video games like I did. I think I was a little behind you. I was a little earlier in games. I remember when Asteroids came out. I remember I was in high school, and some guys came in and said, "Hey, down at the convenience store, there's a little convenience store in Blackstone, Virginia called the Hop In at the time." And he's like, "You're not gonna believe this, dude, at the Hop In, there's this new video game, and it's a cartoon, and you control the character." And we were like, "No way." So it was Donkey Kong.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that happened in the probably late 70s, early 80s, maybe around 80, that Blackstone, Virginia got a Donkey Kong machine. And there's a lot of references in Ready Player One to video games of that era, from the 80s forward, actually. And I don't think he goes back to Donkey Kong, although there may be a reference or two in there from that. But if you've played games, it is an extremely enjoyable book. And if you're familiar with the culture of the 80s, there's a lot of references to the 80s in there. It's a pretty good story. I'll just say that. And they're making a movie out of it. It's supposed to be out in 2018. But I bring it up because you and I talk all the time offline about books we're listening to on Audible. And Audible's a sponsor. So people can go to thedatadrivenbook.com, sign up for free, and get a free book as a result of that. So,
yeah, I love it. I mean, like when I think I told you, so it would have been, I guess, 2 weeks ago now, a week ago now, that I went up to SQL Saturday, Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Which was my first SQL Saturday event that I spoke at. And I spoke at about machine learning. And we could talk about kind of, it's interesting presenting to kind of a SQL crowd or a data crowd versus kind of a data science crowd versus kind of the traditional dev crowd that I'm used to. And but I basically, Grant Cardone he's a, how would you describe him? A self-made billionaire, millionaire, or something like that. And he's very intense. If you've heard of Tony Robbins, he's kind of like Tony Robbins on speed, because he's got like 10 times the intensity of Tony Robbins, which is saying a lot because Tony Robbins is intense.
He is very intense, and you turned me on to Grant, and I listened to 10X, that audiobook, the 10X rule, and I think it was a year or two ago. You got me listening to him, and I was so impressed by the book. We homeschool, and I actually added it to Stevie Ray's curriculum. That was one, and he also after that listened to Be Obsessed or Be Average. And I think that was a book you were listening to on the way up.
It was, yeah. So if you're interested in listening to this, you can use our free book thing. Definitely listen to it because the energy that you get from Grant is infectious. And I listened to 10X Rule first, and that was about the time I found out I was being laid off from Microsoft or given the option of move or leave. And I had kind of that first like, oh, woe is me nonsense like reaction. But this book came in front of me at the most opportune time because it kind of talks about, how to deal with that. And, basically it's toughen up, buttercup, and here's why you should, and here's how you can. And then it was Be Obsessed or Be Average was the book I listened to up. So, I was like, listening to what he said, and I'm like, and I think I like, after the speaker's dinner, and I kind of got a feel for kind of what I thought was going on in the community. I'm like, I think I messaged you or called you. I'm like, Eddie, we got to amp things up. And then and then we kind of, which is a good feeling to have. And then it was kind of like, and I said, and then I was thinking about things we could do for the show, things that we're still going to do, but we haven't done quite in the speed at which I wanted to do them. But then I realized, oh my God, I mainlined Grant Cardone in the car for like 5 hours straight. Like, I mean, it was just like I was bouncing off the walls, which is awesome. I've listened to Be Obsessed or Be Average, no exaggeration, maybe 10 times by now.
Wow.
Because it's just, he kind of touches on this in the book, is that there's just so much information being flung at us at all times.
Yeah.
That it's very hard to, garbage in, garbage out, right? And that goes not just for what you eat, it's not just for what your programs and data, but I think it's also for what you kind of listen to, what you feed your neural network.
I agree
with, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
when you called me, you inspired me. I mean, I was on my feet after we'd been talking for about a minute because there was no sitting through that conversation.
The coffee at SQL Saturday Pittsburgh was also very good. Just saying.
I'm so glad you got a chance to go do that. Welcome to the Data Speakers community,
cool.
By the way.
Cool. Yeah, I'm on the mailing list now when I look for call for presentations, and like there's some in like some really exotic locales, and I'm like, oh my God, that would be awesome.
That would be cool.
There's one coming up in Richmond, I think, sometime in March 2018.
There is March 24th, I believe, is the date.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
For the Richmond SQL Saturday, I'm clicking on my calendar right now. If you hear clicking in the background, yes, March 24th.
Cool. So if anyone listening wants to present at that, Richmond's a cool town to visit. It's I'm biased. I used to live there, so.
Yeah. We met while you were living in Richmond. Back in late 2005. I moved back up this way from Jacksonville, Florida.
Yep.
I went to that first .NET group. I met you, Nick Harris, who was our guest earlier on our show, and Miguel Castro was presenting.
That's right.
We were in a little packed conference room. It was actually a pretty big conference room, but it was filled with people.
Yeah, funny story about that is that we had our original, our normal space. We couldn't get that month. And I knew Miguel from when I lived in New Jersey, and he made a special trip down to Richmond. And I was like, I got to get the space. I can't just cancel it. So I ended up convincing my employer at the time to use the conference room. And then when I saw the RSVPs were getting high and the room was getting crowded, we actually had another conference room across the atrium. and we had a phone and screen sharing app at the same time. Which, remember, in 2005, presenting remotely was still kind of a big deal. So that was pretty cool. So Miguel was a great sport about that. We do a lot of sidetracks. I don't feel so bad. It's like a graph, right? It's not so much a linear line. It's like the graph that you see.
Oh, absolutely, yes. We're stream of consciousness.
Yeah, IoT stream of consciousness. There you go. Speaking of which, I actually watched some of the videos from Ignite, not just the keynotes, but the sessions. And there's one in particular that's about kind of what's new with Azure machine learning.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool because you get to see the thinking behind, well, where does ML Studio fall short? And in my mind, I was just so enamored with the tool that, like, how could you want to replace this, or what could be better than this? And then kind of like having some experience with getting some models into production and stuff, I'm like, yeah, I can see how this could be better. Yeah. And then you watch the presentation, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that is a shortcoming. Yeah. So it's interesting to kind of see where they're going. So I definitely watched that because it's pretty awesome.
Okay, I'll check that one out.
I think I sent you some screenshots from the slides about kind of using AI to help rankle data.
You did, and those are very interesting. There was a ton of announcements that came out of Ignite last week, and they're just now, I think this week, they've been posting the sessions, which are deeper dives, of course, than the keynotes. I watched the keynotes, and a friend of mine and co-author on the Bimmel book, Cathrine Wilhelmsen, was one of the roving reporters there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she got to interview another of our earlier guests, Buck Woody, and that was hilarious, as you can imagine. And Buck was mentioning today, we're recording this on October 10th, 2017, and Buck tweeted today that his session that he presented at Ignite was up. So it'll be interesting to go out and check that one out. But tons and tons of announcements. So I pulled up a page from the blogs at msdn.microsoft.com, and just some of the highlights here. Some of the stuff in bold on data and AI. There's you can run on premises. That was a big deal. I think they formally announced. I forget what they call it, but they have Microsoft, basically the cloud, Azure cloud on premises now, and pretty cool, interesting thoughts behind that. I had a little bit of a preview that might be coming, talking to some people who were working on it. Very interesting. A lot going on, loading to the cloud using Spark. A bunch about containers. And you and I, Frank, we actually chatted some about GPUs.
Right.
The GPU usage, especially powering some of the data science stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the use of, it's interesting how the GPU, the evolution of the business case for GPUs has really changed since they kind of came out. I think originally the only people that really, quote unquote, needed a GPU were gamers. And that's who it was targeted for. And then when you saw in kind of the Windows Vista era, although that's probably a terrible example, a lot of the effort to take the presentation layer, aka WPF, and offload a lot of that work to the GPU in terms of just line of business apps. So that was pretty interesting, and that kind of made that was about the I think the tipping point that made GPUs kind of a standard component of any stock off the shelf computer.
Right. Well, it was almost like developers, kind of woke up and said, hey, there's a whole other processor sitting over there.
Right, exactly. And it's like, well, and in some cases, it was not uncommon to have more RAM and more power in the GPU than it was for the CPU. And it also, in some cases, ended up being more power efficient to offload some of that work instead of on the CPU off to the GPU.
I was just going to say, and it was built for doing things that the CPU really wasn't built to do.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that the architecture, just the nature of what GPUs were engineered for, they were far more friendlier to parallel processing than the typical CPU. And we're seeing that now really come into play is in terms of parallel processing and AI and neural networks, which is really the main reason why, because for the longest time I wondered, how come this is a big deal now? Like, why do people care about GPUs and AI? Why is that so custom? Does that seem custom made for it? And that's why. I mean, they can process information in parallel at amazing speeds.
Well, parallel is almost the secret sauce to doing computing in the 2010s, I would say. I mean, we've known about it for a while using things like, data integration with SSIS. The way you get performance out of it is you figure out what can run in isolation, and you run those things in parallel. I mean, there's a couple of gotchas, right? As long as you don't start running out of resources or something, you're in pretty good shape. But you start now kind of taking all of these little Lego blocks that we've got, Frank, like the cloud and the knowledge of design patterns and architectural patterns like parallelism, and then the power of GPUs plus containers plus all of these other engines that we've got out there like Spark,
right?
And you start building with your Lego blocks. You start building a wall. It's no longer just laying these blocks end to end, and you don't have to worry about running out of resources in the cloud, right? You can just spin up another instance.
Yeah, we have to worry about the bill. That's probably the word.
Well, that's it. But it's pretty cool now. I mean, you think about where we are, and I think it's just an extremely exciting time. One of the other things Microsoft announced, the big news for data geeks like me, I guess I'm an old data geek. I'll call me a data engineer. You're a data scientist. You've got a certificate even. But they announced the release, the general availability of SQL Server 2017. I was actually out in Chicago all last week delivering some training for SQL skills, really great group to learn from. And they announced 2017 a week ago, of course, but it wasn't available until Monday the 2nd. So you know what I was doing that morning? While the class was doing their labs in the background, I've got a VM downloading 2017. And it's just amazing what it does. I mean, in database R, Python, Graph, just, built to run on both Windows and Linux and Docker containers. It's almost magic, man.
Like once you get past, I mean, just the fact that it's actually running on Linux, I know that's not news. It's been out the case for a few months, but that's just still amazing. And plus now the integration with R and Python, I think Microsoft
Absolutely.
is gesturing pretty clearly where their minds are.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and they're not even stopping there. I think another company announced something like, I don't know, cloud or something. I'm not going to mention the company because I don't want to throw off on them. But they mentioned something that like Microsoft introduced, I don't know, 3 to 5 years ago. Amazon's had it for that long or longer. And, they made that announcement. And I saw a blurb on social media about it. It was kind of funny. It said they announced this. And Microsoft said, yeah, we're working on quantum computing.
It's an interesting time to be there, and I think I know the company you're talking about because
it's not hard to picture.
They made a few other statements too, such as open source is not a successful business model or something like that. Like, really?
Yeah.
I think the founder CEO, if it's the same company, but even still, had kind of made disparaging comments about open source, which say what you want about open source, but it's conquered the world already. So, I mean, at this point, it's kind of, I mean, if even Microsoft is embracing open source, and they were a long holdout against it for decades, if even they've given up, then what does that tell you?
Yeah. I mean, it's cool to see them embrace it and participate in it and actually put some code out there as open source as well.
Right.
Well, for, data integration geeks like me, SSIS is now in the cloud.
Oh, yeah, that's Sassafras, right? Or something like that?
SSIS as a service.
SSIS.
Yeah, it's pretty close to Sassafras. Yeah. But yeah, it's exciting to see what you can do with that. I have just begun tinkering with it. I'm going to get into that
Oh yeah.
and see what's going on there. I've been playing around just very lightly with some software development against 2017, and right now everything I've seen so far looks good. So very very happy with the testing I've done to date. So
very cool.
Yeah, excited about it, man.
I'm getting my hands dirty in some of the new Azure machine learning tools, and I'm liking what I see. And I actually have some labs I'm going to come up with based on what I've seen. So.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting. You're one of those fancy schmancy content developers now.
That's right. Well, that's one of my jobs, yeah. But speaking of content development, one of the interesting things is that I got a Stream Deck late last week, which is it's hard to explain it, but it's basically like it's kind of like a video mixer, kind of. To our audience, I would say you're going to see a little bit more of that in the near future.
Awesome.
Once I get my desk back, once I get my office back together.
That sounds fun, Frank. I'm excited for you.
Cool, man. Well, you'll be there too.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I got to get my green screen up. I can see that now.
There you go. But yeah, so it's pretty interesting, and the other thing that's going to happen this week is that on October 12th and October 13th, there's going to be Azure DataFest in Reston, and I'll be speaking at it. And
very cool.
I think originally Buck Woody was supposed to be a speaker, but I guess something fell through. But we'll have some interesting folks speaking. We'll have Jim Dugan, Brian Moran, which is somebody I know you know, and former colleague of mine at Microsoft, Ashish Jaiman, is going to be there. And I don't think it's free. I think there was a bit of a charge for it, but it's definitely going to be an interesting event to have. And I know Brian's hoping to make it kind of a regular thing, and we're really excited about it. It's called Azure Data Fest, October 12th and October 13th in Reston, Virginia.
That's going to be a great show.
Yeah, I'm excited about it because I'm seeing some of the stuff that's in there. Some speakers are Microsoft employees, and some folks are not. But what's interesting is a lot of what happens. And this is kind of I know this from personal experience. Is that sometimes when they announce something at a conference like Ignite, what they usually do is they'll train up people at Microsoft about a month or two ahead of time to be able to present it and have labs and kind of presentations ready to go when they do make it available publicly. So just by looking at some of the session titles, I'm guessing that some of these folks definitely have had some access to that data.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. I hope some of our listeners get to go and check it out, and especially get to go see Frank speak. If you listen to the show and you're there, go introduce yourself to Frank. Let him know that you listen to our show. And you're saying this is Friday the 13th.
Yeah, Friday the 13th is when I'm speaking, so I don't know what that means. In October, no less, right?
In October, yeah. What else could we pile on this?
Oh, don't ask that. Don't ever ask that question.
No, you'll be fine, Frank. It's going to be a great talk, and I'm sure the event's going to be awesome.
Yeah,
I'm actually on the road on Friday the 13th. I'm going to SQL Saturday, Charlotte.
Oh, cool. So you're going to bump into Melissa?
I am looking forward to that. Melissa was on our show last week. She was awesome. And I'm taking Emma with me this time, my 12-year-old daughter. And they are doing a STEM focused on girls 6th to 8th grade, a 3-hour thing down there. I believe it's called Data Stories. That's the name of it. Data Stories, yeah. So it was a 3-hour block either in the morning or the afternoon. And I don't think Emma's ever gone with me to one of these events. Stevie Ray's been going with me a lot, and Riley never likes to leave the house. So Yeah, he's very much. He's like, we go 5 miles away to Walmart, and he's there for 2 minutes and says, "Can we go home now?" You know, very much a homebody. But Emma's traveling with me. She's all excited about it, and she's excited to learn more about data anyway. And so yeah, it's going to be our first road trip.
That's cool,
and really looking forward to it. Yeah, it's going to be neat. I'm speaking on. I got to remember now. I think it's on Faster SSIS. A relatively new presentation.
Oh, very cool. Are you going to talk about Sassafras?
Yeah, I may, yes. I should try and work up a demo between now and then on Sassafras so I could talk about it, but probably not. I'm probably just going to stick with traditional, on-premises SSIS. It's odd to say that, isn't it?
It is. We live in some very interesting times. That's for sure.
So what are you speaking on at the Reston Azure Fest?
I'm basically doing a modification of Fear and Loathing in Data Science because they didn't like the title.
That's a good talk, but they didn't like the title.
I think it just didn't. Some people have a sense of humor, some people don't. And I think the organizers wanted to have things, all very proper and prim and stuff like that. I mean,
well, wait a minute. Have they heard you present before?
I don't know. Apparently not. No, I can turn into K Street Frank at any time. So, but I mean, basically, the session is going to be about kind of like, because there is not a lot of topics like geared towards people like, okay, this data stuff is great. Now what? Like, yeah. And that's basically what the talk is about. Like, how do you go from being a regular person to a data scientist? That sounds really bad. But how do you go from being a regular developer or data engineer into becoming a data scientist? And, what does that path look like? And actually I did a write-up today, actually, or last night, that so for folks who don't know, I have an MSDN column that for the better part of a year and a half was focused on UWP development. Actually, starting this month, it is now about artificial intelligence and ML. And for the December issue, the editor is doing kind of I don't want to say cover story, but a story about kind of like, well, where is ML, not only where is ML and AI going, but where did it come from? How did the big data revolution kind of kickstart the efforts that we're seeing in AI and ML today? And
right.
For my answers, you'll have to wait till December, but it is an interesting kind of problem, is that in terms of how are developers and data engineers going to have to reskill? And
yeah,
I got bad news for them. They're going to have to reskill anyway, so you might as well do it early.
Yeah.
And that was something you pointed out. You pep talk you gave me before my SQL Saturday Pittsburgh talk was kind of a lot of these folks are going to be DBAs and they're already kind of like confused about, what's their future going to look like. A big part of a DBA's job, like it or not, is kind of handling the infrastructure. And then once you kind of you abstract that away into the cloud, one DBA can do the job of 5 or 10.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? What does that mean for the DBAs of the future?
Yeah, I remember that pep talk. It's definitely a different audience,
Yep.
And I have an awful lot of empathy and sympathy for folks who feel like they're trapped and are worried about the future. And there's still a ton of opportunity out there. I was sharing with, of all people, I was visiting with our local podiatrist, our foot doctor in Farmville earlier today. Really cool guy. He's also from Jersey, Frank.
Oh, really? What exit?
Yeah. I was going to share. That's my joke with him, right? Anybody says they're from Jersey, I ask them which exit. But great guy, interesting to talk to, really easygoing. And he was asking me more about, about the work and what type of stuff we do. And, as you explain it to folks and how the world is changing and how, it's impacting our careers and career trajectories. And a lot of the answer is right now we just don't know.
Right.
And that's enough, right? The uncertainty is enough to cause fear, and it's justified fear. I think it's a good thing to be concerned about it. Don't let it ruin your sleep or ruin your night. Rather, do something like you did and like Kent did, and we did a show about this about a month ago, where you talked about your experiences going through the data science curriculum there at edX through Microsoft Academy. And if you don't want to spend any money or spend very little money, you can audit those classes for free. You can get the information.
Right.
And then you can go for free out to WordPress.org or whatever, set up a blog, and start writing about this as you play with it. But you can even do things online for free with machine learning, and Brad Llewellyn mentioned that in our interview with him. So there's just a ton of stuff that you can do out there for either no money or very little money, and you can prepare for this certainly uncertain future.
Absolutely, and I think that there's so much inspiration. If you need inspiration, you don't think you could do it, there's a TED Talk, and her name escapes me, but she's never been a guest on the show, so that's okay. Although I'd love to get her as a guest on the show, is that she basically taught herself data science, taught herself how to do machine learning, how to teach herself everything needed to get to that point, because she was motivated to find a cure for cancer or assist in finding a cure for cancer.
Wow.
And she did this all while she started when she was 12, when I think her aunt was diagnosed or her mom had a scare with it. And, long story short, she's probably still in school now, but she's in Stanford now. And this is probably just someone who ordinarily would not have gotten into the STEM fields at all, but she had a personal motivation that kept her so motivated she overcame any obstacle. And she had the access to the cloud, so she didn't have to buy her own servers. So all she needed was a basic run-of-the-mill laptop. Very inspirational story. And
very cool.
If a kid can do that today, and you're an accomplished professional, there's no excuse.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy, but no one ever said it was going to be easy.
No, definitely not. And you can start today at Microsoft Academy. That's not hard to find.
Nope.
Also edX, edx.org.
Right.
And they work together. And you can tie your live ID right into an edX account. And again, you can start auditing a lot of those classes. I'd say most of them. You can audit them for free. You can get the knowledge.
Right. Well, not even that. I mean, if you the great thing is there's YouTube, and YouTube isn't just cat videos.
Oh yeah.
YouTube has any number of videos on this topic. I mean, I blog a lot about them, right? So if you want a shortcut to them, go to my blog, franksworld.com. Although you might want to type in www.franksworld.com because of some DNS drama I'm having. But that's another story, which we did kind of talk about why there was DNS drama.
We could go there, yeah.
I still bug them on Twitter. I have a lot of fun with that.
I cannot believe they deleted your backups. I still can't believe they deleted your backups.
For not paying a free service.
Yeah.
They did it to somebody else, too. But I don't want to hijack this.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they did it to somebody else, too. And I saw another tweet thread that there might be another third person that this has happened to. Because it's just, their bureaucratic processes are broken.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's sad.
You can go to YouTube and find videos on this. Now, some of the videos are very esoteric and kind of talk about really obscure mathematical terms, but you want to find something like by Siraj Raval. This guy is incredible. I mean, this guy, if you made Grant Cardone a data scientist, it would be Siraj. Because he'll say things like, I'm going to teach you how to make a neural network in TensorFlow in 4 minutes.
Wow.
I'm like, I saw that and I'm like, dude, I don't even think you could do that, Siraj. And I have great respect for Siraj. And 4 minutes later, I'm like, oh my God, I understand the universe now. I mean, he's that good at it. Plus, he throws in a lot of memes, and he'll even rap every now and then about data science.
Oh, wow.
Which that alone's worth the price of admission.
It sounds like it. I got to check this guy out.
He's out of control. I've been kind of begging him on Twitter to like, hey, dude, come on the show. Dude, come on the show. Dude, come on the show. So if the data drivers want to help, you should tweet at Siraj Raval. Please, please, please go on Data Driven.
That would be outstanding. Yes, we need to bombard him.
Right.
All of our data drivers. If you all write one tweet, he'll get several tweets. So
we would love to. We would love to get him on the show. Because, I mean, it's just like you watch his videos. It's like there's ones where he explains things and they're awesome, and there's some things where it's pretty clear. Like buckle your seatbelt and hold on. Build a neural network in 4 minutes, and that is definitely one of them.
You know, I've got 4 minutes. I'm going to go check that out.
I'll totally check it out. Plus, there's another one, and I'm going to load up that URL now. I think I sent you this link, but it's called teachablemachine.withgoogle.com, and we'll put this in the show notes. Basically, it lets you use the webcam and your browser to create a computer vision solution.
You sent me this, and I was on the road. I think I was in Spartanburg.
I think you were in a class or something like that.
Yeah.
You were like, well,
that's right. That's what it was.
Like, no,
I was teaching
later. And it's really cool. Stop what you're doing and go to it now. There's actually a tutorial that you can listen to that would really mess up listening to the podcast. But anyway, you basically go in and it requests access to your browser's webcam, and if you watch the video, it makes a lot more sense. But basically, I have it up now, and there's webcams look at me talking into the mic.
Yeah.
And the webcam, I could train basically a neural network to recognize differences in pictures. So I can have a picture of me in the frame, picture of me without the frame, and it'll know Frank's in frame, Frank's not in frame. Or if I'm making a stupid face versus not making a stupid face, it'll learn that. And you know what the real magic of this is?
What's the magic?
There's two magical things. One, it's all done in browser.
That is magic.
This is JavaScript. And no code. There's no code to it. You're literally teaching a computer to spot patterns. Totally check it out.
Wow. Okay.
It is impressive. And what's really cool is that what's really neat about it is you can kind of test the neural network. Well, you know, if I have one picture where I'm looking normal and another one where I'm doing a stupid face, you can actually see the confidence levels in terms of if it's determined that I met condition A, B, or C, or in this case, green, purple, and orange. When you go to the site, it'll make perfect sense. And how, you can see, well, how stupid of a stupid face does the computer think it's stupid? Like, you know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
And you can then clear it and you kind of retrain it and stuff like that. You can add more data points and things like that. I did it when to show my older son, like, because we were talking about this, and he's like, well, what do you do? I think there's a class on what does your daddy do, or something like that. I'm like, well, let me show you what I kind of do. And I showed him. I was like, okay, look, this is a picture of me. This is a picture of you in the frame with me, and here's a picture of just you in the frame. And sure enough, after 30 seconds, we had the computer being able to differentiate when I was in the frame, when we were both in the frame, and when it was just him in the frame.
Huh.
No code, just browser.
Wow.
It'll also work on a mobile browser too, although not as well.
That's just impressive.
It's science fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just just 5 years ago, this would have not been considered possible.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was science fiction 5 years ago, and now, we're doing this. We're training the AIs to recognize images. And it's being done in JavaScript on a browser.
Yep. No special fancy anything to install. If you're worried about privacy, they say that all this is no information is being sent up. I haven't run a packet sniffer to kind of double check that with because Google, and that was a joke. I guess that bombed. That was a joke that bombed right there. But I mean, it's all done.
I was sitting here thinking of my own joke.
What?
Frank, I'm sorry. When you said that, I was thinking nothing. Yeah, sure, no one but you and the NSA.
Right, exactly. And And so anyway, I definitely recommend checking it out. There's a whole tutorial that'll walk you through to use it. I mean, it's a great way you can kind of test the limits of what the algorithm thinks is, the conditions that you set up. So I have one where it's like, I can't say enough good things about it.
Cool.
I actually I was actually at a podcasters meetup last week in DC. Met with some interesting fellow podcasters, and I referenced this site. I mean, this site is a great explanation of how machine learning works, and and then I also said, this is important for people to understand because this revolution isn't happening in the future. This is happening now.
Right.
And it's going to happen whether you like it or not because it's happening now. And it's affecting your life in ways you don't consciously are aware of. It controls what coupons that Target sends you. It controls, what recommended products you see when you shop on Amazon. It controls the stuff that you see in your Facebook feed.
Yeah.
And this is very much here and now.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think for the longest time we hyped how cool it would be to have curated stuff. Machine curated stuff, and we thought it would be, I think we thought a little naively about it that it would be all good, and I think it's mostly good. But the opportunity for people to manipulate this is just still there.
Well, what's interesting is that we see kind of in the news that, some shady characters posted ads on Facebook in and around certain events in the U.S. And,
yeah.
I mean, not just the election, but it was also related to Ferguson, too. This could be a massive attack vector for kind of psychological operations. PsyOps,
yeah.
I think the cool kids call them. And I know it sounds crazy. It sounds tinfoil hat. I think it does too. But it's not impossible.
Well, the next thing, Frank, you'll be saying is that the government is reading our email.
Oh, that's crazy talk.
And keeping logs of our phone calls.
That's crazy talk.
Yeah, I know it is. Forgive me. Sorry.
It's all crazy talk.
Okay.
It's proven, right? I mean,
That's
right. I think that's the lesson of Edward Snowden is that,
agreed.
as crazy sounds, every once in a while, maybe there's a grain of truth that maybe that grain got exaggerated as stories got passed around. But it is certainly an interesting case study and that actually did happen.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely interesting stuff. Well, Frank, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you, brother. I always enjoy it when we get a chance to talk.
Yeah, likewise. And for folks that are curious about the show, definitely check out our website, datadriven.tv. And we have some interesting things in the pipeline. They may be behind schedule, but they are still happening. And, I just realized something, Andy. It's been about a year since I came up with the idea for Data Driven.
Yeah, I remember us talking about it.
It's actually going to be about a year since I got my concussion, which kind of led into this.
Are those two things related, Frank?
I think they might be. I don't know. It's just like in Back to the Future, right? And he had the idea for the flux capacitor.
Well, that I was thinking Isaac Newton, but we're in different generations. So.
But no, I mean, it's interesting how that story unfolded.
Yeah. Yep, very cool. I'm glad you thought of me.
Who else would I think of, dude?
Oh, I don't know. You could have found somebody smart or good looking.
They weren't available, so no, just kidding.
Well, that's thank goodness. The one thing you did luck out on, Frank, the one thing you did luck out on was you found somebody who doesn't have an accent.
There you go.
So there.
No one has an accent until you learn that everyone has an accent.
That'll be the next thing for AI. Figure out who has an accent.
Oh, I'm sure it's already being done.
Probably. Well, natural language processing, I think that's going to be the big buzzword next year.
That is going to be the big buzzword. And I would say GAN. You're going to hear a lot about GAN, generative adversarial networks.
Yep.
Siraj Raval has an awesome video on that too. So thanks for listening, folks, and we'll see you next week. And if you see me in Reston this week, just stop by and say hi, and tell everyone that you know that you love the show. And what's that URL again if people want to take advantage of our deal with Audible?
They can go to thedatadrivenbook.com. And also, if you see me down in Charlotte with the cutest 12-year-old ever, come up and say hi.
Awesome. Have a great week, folks. Take it away, British lady.
Thanks for listening to Data Driven. Don't just listen. Become a data driver by going to datadriven.tv to sign up to join the community, access to special events, tips and tricks, and more. Sign up today at datadriven.tv.